This week on Half Step Down, Jose is impressed. Oh, okay, so, wow. Renee shows off.
Obviously, as you can tell by my headphones, I'm a baller.
The boys give a shout out to the Italian community. No, yeah, I could see you being Italian.
Ah, okay. Well, I appreciate that.
All that plus a very special guest while we talk about Magic the Gathering. Get out your deck boxes and your favorite card sleeves. Half Step Down starts now. Hey everyone, it's Jose from the editing room, and I just wanted to give you a little warning. We're going to get into some heavy Magic the Gathering jargon, so you might be a little confused. Just kind of let that nerdiness wash over you. Trust me, it's going to be fun. Here we go.
Jose, I have a question for you.
I have an answer.
Do you think, how generic do you think our names are in the Hispanic community?
Very. Jose is incredibly generic.
Yeah? Do you think your full name is pretty generic?
I
would
know.
think mine is... Yeah, what's up?
I know my name is generic.
Yeah. And that's why I came up with your wrestler name this
100%.
week. Are you ready to hear it? Okay. Well, welcome everyone to Half Step Down.
Jesus Christ.
Where two aging punk rockers talk about pop culture and punk rock. We are your co-hosts, Renee Grano and the generic Jose Martinez. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing 100%. Was that my name? Generic Jose Martinez?
That was your wrestler name for the week. Yeah, the generic Jose Martinez.
Ah, the generic. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, the generic Jose Martinez. So I think I'm gonna do this thing every week and think of a new wrestler name for you.
Okay, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it.
I'm glad you're okay with it because I'm gonna keep doing it. Okay, so I thought of the generic Jose Martinez because I figured our names are pretty generic.
Oh man,
Let alone my last name is Italian. That's what I found out. I found out my last name's Italian, so that's kind of cool. Even though I look nowhere near Italian.
I mean, I could see you being Italian. I could see it a little bit.
Well, I mean, the last name being Italian, but the last name, but not me, right?
No, yeah, I could see you being Italian.
Ah, okay. Well, I appreciate that. Jose, we are here for a very special episode. I'm excited. I know you're excited. We are going to talk about something that is very near and dear to me because I've been playing this game for quite some time. I want to say about 15 years or so, on and off for about 15 years. And that game that we are going to be talking about today extensively is Magic the Gathering. And I think you have some information on that.
Okay, yeah. So, Magic the Gathering, Cardboard Crack, as it is known among some of the Magic community, is a collectible card game that officially launched back in 1993 with an initial set. It is very late. Of 295 cards.
Yes.
Since then, it has grown into a worldwide phenomenon with over 20,000 unique cards, pro players, tournaments, an entire lore and history, its own economy. Countless new sets and expansions and ever-growing player base mean that the game has a thriving community around it. While not the first collectible card game, Magic is considered the collectible card game perfected, with some people calling it the best game ever created. Since its inception, we have seen an explosion in the scene with the likes of Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Cardfight, Hearthstone, and many other copycats, but the Magic the Gathering formula is the OG. Not bad for a game that Peter Atkinson, founder of Wizards of the Coast, thought would be a fun game to play while you wait for your DM. My first memories of this game, Renee, are in grade school and watching all the really smart kids play this game. I, being a very slow reader, was not that into it, and then it was eventually banned from my school. What are your first memories of it?
I was about 15 or 16 years old. I was at a KB Toys. I had realized that at that age, Pokemon was not essentially something that I should be playing, and I saw Magic the Gathering. The first set that I played, I want to say, was right after the Time Spiral blocks. I think it was either Onslaught before or after. It was the Onslaught block, and that's when I was introduced to it. I just picked up a bunch of booster packs and started playing. I remember playing with a couple of my friends and just having the rules all wrong, and in all honesty, that was probably the funnest time, because you would do things like turns later not knowing what they did, and that was probably some of the funnest times. So being able to play what some people in the community call tabletop magic is always fun. That's just a nicer way to say just playing a bunch of fun stuff that isn't really competitive. So that's my first memory. But on top of that, though, we actually have somebody very special on the podcast. It's her first time here. Our first guest. Our second guest on the show. She is
Let's just make her the first guest. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, let's make her the first.
We're not going to talk about
the first one
our
doesn't count
guest,
because there was no break there. Yeah, and I'm sure he's listening.
He's probably still answering a question.
And you know what? He probably is. And he's, after every other word, he's saying, dude.
That's true.
Yeah. We're going to introduce our first guest here. She is a Magic the Gathering TikTok content creator. She has up to 5,000 people following her now from the Magic community. She makes skits, magic skits, and she just, to me, not because I know her, but it seems, and people have said it on TikTok and stuff like that, that she genuinely, it seems like she genuinely loves to make these videos. So I'm going to introduce you guys to my girlfriend and the magic creator, Shayla Salmeron. Shayla, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Wasn't that a wonderful intro from your boyfriend?
That was very sloppy.
Jose,
I'm gonna be honest.
You need to remember that we are, Jose and I are professionals.
Yes.
We are the last two greatest podcast duo of all time. I don't know if that makes sense.
I remember that.
Yes, thank you. I hope you do.
Shayla, I just want you to know that this is
I'm an avid listener, I can tell.
This is I appreciate it. That is an internal struggle with me every week. Is every time we hand off the mic to Renee.
Oh my goodness.
I'm going to get better. You will see. I've gotten better. Leave me alone. Just let's ask the questions.
Okay. So let's just do this. This is off to a great start. Okay.
Yes.
Shayla, so how did you first get into Magic the Gathering? Just in general, what got you into it?
Okay, so I remember me and Renee were dating for like a few months, I think. Mm-hmm. And him and his nephew were super persistent about trying to get me to play. And I was like, no, that's too nerdy. Like, I'm already like, no, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time we went on a date and we took my little brother for some reason, who was like 10 years old at the time. And the way he got me was by asking him if he wanted to learn how to play. So then my brother got all excited. He's like, oh, a game. And obviously little kids always want to play games. So because my brother said yes, I was like, okay, I guess I'm stuck doing this now, even though I didn't want to. And that's how it got started.
Oh, that's actually really cool. I in watching your videos, I imagined that you were already into it. But this guy, oh man.
Yeah, no, he was like very like, let's go, come on, let's play. And I'm like, no.
You know, I am a persistent person, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Very persistent. Like, I have been trying Jose to love Newfound Glory for about 15 years now, and the persistence is still there. Yeah.
And I was like, he used my 10-year-old brother against me.
Yeah.
What's wrong with him?
Yeah, smart. I was a smart man.
Was. No, I'm just kidding.
How dare you. So, Shayla, piggybacking on that question, how would you, now that you are now involved in the Magic community, how do you involve the things what is it that you do exactly on social media, more specifically TikTok?
Okay, so can I just ask you a question first?
Sure.
Do you know what my username is?
I do know it, I just don't know how to pronounce it. Why don't you tell the audience?
No, I want you to tell them.
Jose, do you know how to pronounce her on TikTok?
So just real quick, what I was kind of hoping for when you were introducing our guest is since she is a TikTok content creator, that you would be like, oh, this is Shayla, also known as on TikTok. But that's cool. It's cool, man. This is a free podcast.
I wanted to hear it.
here's the thing. There's a couple of words that I cannot pronounce, and I cannot pronounce her.
I would like to hear it.
Her username. So why don't you do it, Jose?
Nope. She's asking you, man. This is coming straight from the girlfriend and from the guest of the show. You are the host.
Yes.
Your name comes first.
Yes.
So the only reason it comes first is because I'm the one who introduces the show. But you are the host, my friend.
We're co-hosts, but your name comes
He's
first.
He's denying the guest an answer to the question.
Yeah. Okay. So also Shayla Samran, who also goes as at idol of a blossom .mtg on TikTok. And just so everybody knows, I am also an off-screen character on her TikTok. I go by #theboyfriend.
Nah, it's not gonna happen. No. So what I do there was that the question? It's what I do.
Yes.
I just make cringy videos on the internet. I just come up with an idea and I just throw it out there. If I could make one person laugh, that's good enough for me. But I will tell you that I think my sister and brother tried to get me onto TikTok, and I was like, I'm almost 30 years old. I'm not going on TikTok. Yeah. That's not gonna replace Vine.
Yeah.
But then I saw a couple of people on there, and I was like, they look like they're my age, and they're doing magic stuff. That looks like fun. So that's how I got into it.
Would you say? Go ahead, Jose. You were gonna
you go ahead. You were about to say something.
Oh, sorry. How was it that how did you like get into actually doing these TikTok videos? Like, what got you to say, you know what? I said, this is the kind of videos I want to do.
Honestly, I just wanted to make fun of our playgroup. Low key, I was like, I'm just gonna grab the silliness that happens at our playgroup and throw it on screen. I thought it'd be funny. Some people think it is, some people don't, but that's okay.
You know, I was doing a run through on you because I realized today I actually follow your personal account, but I did not follow your Magic the Gathering account. So today I was kind of running through them, and they are hilarious. Because one of the things I thought was going to happen was because I don't know Magic the Gathering. I know mana. I know that there are creatures involved. I know that at some point you take the card and you flip it so that it's a different direction. And then at the end of that, somebody loses. So, like, you had the video about, like, I'm not going to simp for anyone else, and then you had all the art from the different cards. You had me laughing. I literally LOL'd. So, bravo for that one. But, yeah, I was very much kind of like, oh, I don't think I'm going to get any of this stuff. But when I started, like, looking through it, it was great. How do you think that this, like, does the larger Magic community, is there like a Magic community on TikTok?
Yeah, there's a whole mess of people. I think I believe I'm following almost like 800 people. Most of those people are Magic accounts. And then some of them are just dog accounts, but most of them are Magic accounts. And it's cool because you get to see like different perspectives and opinions, and some people do lore videos, some people like mix it up with D&D. Some people do skits, and other people, you know, they just like express their opinion on TikTok, which is pretty cool.
That's really interesting. Now I'm going off script. Renee's hating me, but like I find that very interesting, just because when I was researching the game, there were so many aspects to it that I didn't know about. Like I didn't know that there was a lore to the whole thing. I didn't know that there was kind of like a continuity to the story of Magic. And I was like, kind of, when you were talking about how there are different people that are doing different things with it, I never really kind of thought about that kind of stuff until I started researching Magic and then started watching your videos. You can really take it in a lot of different directions. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you how many people are doing what you're doing, but it looks like you're following over 800 people and they're all doing Magic together.
Yeah.
And you know what? As just somebody who follows some content creators, and obviously I follow her and stuff like that, but the community on TikTok is growing.
Yeah.
And I think the community itself is very friendly. That's something that we'll get into later on in the show when we start, towards the end here. But it's sometimes this game can be kind of intimidating, especially when you're looking at all these things, but outside of just the nutshell of how you just explained it, right? You have mana, you have creatures, and they turn certain ways to do things, and then one person dies. That's basically how it goes, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's basically how I introduce her and her brother to play the game. But there's also all these integral parts into the game, but you learn those as you move on. But when you think it can be kind of like intimidating to get into it, the community is very friendly, and even on TikTok I've noticed comments. I mean, everybody follows each other in that community, and I think that's a good thing. What do you think? Yeah,
people like I saw this guy, for example. This, I can't remember who posted this. If I did, I would post his name down. But somebody commented on his video asking like, I'm interested. I'm watching these videos on TikTok, and I'm interested in getting into Magic the Gathering. How can I do this? And that creator like opened up the question for other creators to be able to answer the person that asked the question originally. So like they would get answers from like multiple people, various sources. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. You know, piggybacking on that as well, if somebody, like, let's just say in your position, or in, for example, my position as just a player, right? Somebody who watches the TikTok videos, or maybe even Jose who wants to get into the game. What can they do, or what can they expect getting into the game itself, and then maybe even wanting to create content for people? Like, what do you think what did you experience when you first started, and what did you expect as well?
Well, when I first started, like when I went to we went to our LGS, right? We met people there,
which is a local game shop.
A local game shop. Yes. We went there, and as we play, I learned certain things, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this, and I ask a question, and people are very happy to answer, always very happy to answer and explain and go into detail of how things work. What else was it?
Sorry, I was drinking water. Man, everybody always catches me while I'm in the water level drinking water.
This is a constant on the show, is that Renee is always taking a giant gulp of water when we're in the middle of a question.
People.
We want you to stay thirsty. Yes. Don't drink water.
Yeah, stay thirsty, my friend.
Stay thirsty.
Yes. My question was what would people expect getting into the game, as well as, let's just say, wanting to create content? Like, what did you expect, and what did you actually get out of it?
Oh, well, for the making content part, I was actually scared. I was scared of making content because I thought, it's social media, so I was like, people are going to make fun of me. I don't know what I'm doing. People are going to think it's cringe, which it is, but people are actually very supportive, and they're like, like sharing the love and spreading, like, follow this person, follow them. I think they're funny. So I think just jumping in is a great way to start.
So for a newcomer that's to jump into Magic, like, what do you need to do? Like, Renee talked about the first time he played, he just bought a bunch of booster packs. Is there like a starter set? Like, is that how it works, or do you just buy the card packs and go?
I believe they changed it, but when I first started, they would give you these beginner decks of different colors. And like in each card, it even gives you like instructions, like, it has haste. Haste means this creature could attack right away, and stuff like that. And you could even ask like the owner to like help you, and they're more than happy to do that. But like for me, and how I assume more people, like the way that I assume people get into it is through friends. Like I taught my little brother's friends to play, and that's how they learned. And if they get like as they learn and they want to get more friends involved, they would show their friends as well. So I just think it's like a little plague, You play, and then you want to teach more people to play, and then it just spreads that way.
Yeah, when I was doing research on the appeal of it, they talked about the thing that makes it so kind of addicting is that it's a combination of like cards and chess, in that there's a strategy to it, but you can also just get really lucky. So it's not like if a beginning chess player were to play like a master, they would lose instantly. There's like a luck aspect to it that makes it kind of fun and exciting. So, and to kind of play off what you were saying about how the community, when you first started, you were like scared that people would make fun of you. One of the things I've noticed, especially about nerdy communities, is that it's very kind of refreshing to watch someone kind of take the piss out of the community. Nerds have a tendency to take everything really seriously. So I feel like when someone within their community is making fun of it, it's kind of like okay. But that's always like I can understand it being intimidating, right? I always think of like walking into a comic book store and seeing that wall of books and being like, where do I get started? But like every time I've been to a game shop, they tend to be really nice, and that's cool that that the community is so open and like willing to take people in.
You know, I also feel that the community is growing, you know, on a yearly basis, on even because of the fact of its popularity in specific formats. One thing that people need to know about the Magic the Gathering is that there are formats within the game. So you have the most popular format is called Commander, or EDH for the ones who have been playing for, you know, a long time. Commander, or EDH, is a game where you create a 100 card singleton deck with a general on your end, and basically what it is you can play with 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, 6 people. It's a group dynamic, and that is their most popular format to date. You also have more competitive formats like the standard format, which is sets that have been released over the last 2 years, and it rotates every year. And then as you keep further back, Pioneer, Modern, Legacy, Vintage, the further back you go, the bigger the card pool gets, and then the more competitive it can actually get. The faster the deck, the faster the game can go, you know, stuff like that. So I think specific formats can be kind of intimidating, especially if you're playing like in tournaments, because every Friday they have FNMs, right, which is Friday Night Magic, which is done at every local game store that has Magic the Gathering. And so I think it could also be kind of hexing to see a group like learning how to play 100 card singleton format can be very difficult. But even so, you still have those people in a group that can just help you. And I think that's also something that people can also misconstrue, because like you said, right, it can be kind of like, oh man, like when I remember when I first walked into a comic book store with my own money, right, finally buying my books, I'm like, dude, what am I getting? Where do I start? What do I do? Right? And I think that can happen with anything. But and you're absolutely, I think it helps out a lot that there's people out there that are willing to help. And I think, and even so, speaking on the community is growing, but there's also more women playing. Yeah. Right? How do you feel about, because it gets, when we first started playing at our local game store, there was only maybe you and one other, you know, girl, and then it got even more, right? Like there's more people.
At our LGS, I don't think we experienced that many girls. Well, we saw more girls as like time went by. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I remember we met another couple, and he was teaching his girlfriend how to play too, and she was so nervous about playing with us, and we're like, no, it's okay. Like we'll help you. We got this. Like yeah, we're all cool here. Yeah, and on TikTok, actually, I made a whole TikTok video just on International Women's Day. And I think I couldn't fit every single female creator that I found on there, but at least there was 30 women that I put on that video. So, and I was like, this is pretty great. It's nice to see that there are more women, because I'm just so used to being the only one at the shop playing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because I picture. So the last thing I think that I remember about Magic the Gathering before, I mean, it's always kind of been a part of my life because Renee has been into it for as long as I can remember. But the last thing I remember, like in mainstream kind of media, was that guy that took all the pictures of the exposed ass cracks at the Magic the Gathering festival.
Yeah, at the GPs and all that, at the Grand Prix,
And I always just remembered it as, it was a straight up boys club, because it was the nerdy kids who would sit there with their decks of cards, and they were like talking about like, oh, this is my damage deck, or this is whatever it is. But do you think that has to do with just the uptick in like nerd culture just getting bigger and bigger anyway? And like it sounds like the community is into it. Do you think that the community as a whole is into it? Basically, like newcomers coming in.
I would hope so. I would hope that that people would like more people coming in. That way it gives more variety to not just Magic, right? But to like every nerd culture little group. I don't know what you would call that.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, Jose, because I also I want to touch a little bit on that too. You know, so we have a play group. It started with us two and 2 other people, and then it grew with just people that we happen to get along with, and it ended up being 10 of us. Now there's 10 people in our play group, and hopefully when all this blows over, right, when the pandemic blows over, we can kind of somewhat normalize. one of the things that we'd love to do is finally get together and hang out and just play some Commander and just kind of hang out with each other, right? That's one thing that we miss the most, is being able to do something like that. But at the table, you're not only talking about Magic, but I've talked about music with like our friend Jeff. I've talked about sports with our friend Joe. We've talked about, just a bunch of dumb, stupid things with our friend Carlo. Our friend Wes will talk about Star Trek. We'll start talking about, a bunch of other stuff with other different people, right? With our play group. So I think Magic does, outside of outside of other nerd cultures, is that it brings other people from different areas and puts them together, because they all tend to just like one game. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's nerd poker, right? It's like the point of the game is not so much. It's not like the cards are so amazing to hold. It's like you get to play with someone else and have that experience. It's like like I said, it's a more complicated version of poker. If you want the feeling of poker but with some strategy to it, you play Magic. So. But I think where I was coming from is nerd culture has a tendency to be a very, like, you get away from my stuff. And then especially for women, for whatever reason, the stereotype growing up was like anytime a girl would try to infiltrate the group of nerds, they were always hazed. And that, for whatever reason, obviously always seemed ass backwards to me, because the stereotypical nerd always complains about girls not wanting to be involved, and now that girls want to be involved, why would they reject it? But it seems like, and from everything I've read online, that the community is very open to taking people in. And I mean, obviously the game has grown. It's almost a 30-year-old game, and it's still growing.
Yeah, it's only gonna grow, I would think. And there's also things out there that obviously people, the community can hate, the community can love. I think it's like everything, right? Like, there's things that in the punk rock community, for us, when it comes to just music, there's things we like, there's things we don't like. And I think that's pretty common. But I think, and I hope you can agree with me, I think it's just, we hope that people are just nice enough to kind of accept the fact that this game gets bigger and bigger, and just accept it and just have more fun being able to have more people around. Yeah.
Some people are very accepting of new people, and other people, like people who have been playing for the longest time, sometimes get kind of possessive of the game. Like, they're like, no, this is my thing. This is how it was back in my day. And it's like, okay, but that's not how it is anymore. Yeah.
And that's happened to me in the game too. Yeah. There was times where like we were playing Magic, but there's specific rules that have changed over the last few years, and I stopped playing for about 5 years, and I was like, no, that's how it happened before. And I remember getting mad about it.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean I can't stack this tribal there and absorb all the trample? Like, what are you talking about?
I thought that was so crazy when you would do that.
Yeah, I was like, we used to be able to do stuff like that.
I was like, what do you mean you don't take anything?
Yeah, so I would think that, I've been, I'm one to blame too, because I've done that. I think we've all done that at some point, but not really realizing that you do it. But, I think that kind of speaks for everything, right? Like, you kind of, hopefully people are more accepting, and it seems to be. Yeah. Especially, I mean, like I said earlier, our play group has been started with just 3 or 4 of us, and it grew to 10, right? Because we just happen to connect with people that we just enjoy, and now they're some of our closest friends,
Yeah, and like, so primarily when you play Magic, do you have like your set group of friends that you play with, or is it the type of thing where like I'd have to go to my game shop and sit down for like Friday night Magic? What is it for you guys?
Well, we normally just go play at the shop anyways, because there's more room. There's a lot of people we could play with. Right. If our friends aren't there, there are always people who are like, hey, do you want to come play with us? So we play with random people and we meet them, and that's fun. But when our friends are there, we like to hang out with them too, and just like chill out and play and eat snacks and stuff.
You know what? Your LGSs, as a community, are also the owner, which is actually one of my closest friends. He always says that we're a family. Like, this is the family, right? And it's funny because you don't think of it that way, but looking back at it, you're like, man, if our playgroup isn't here, it doesn't mean that we don't know everybody else at the store.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I have a handful of friends that I keep in touch with through text messages who are friends from the shop, but not necessarily our play group, but we can play with them whenever we want.
Yeah.
You know, and they're just, it is a little family sometimes because, you know, you bicker, you have a good time. Man, there was times where like people would take cupcakes or food. We'd have like potlucks and shit like that. Like, you know, so it could also become a very tight knit sort of people in the store. But it doesn't. So I would like to think that it makes it pretty homey sometimes, depending on where you go. Because there's also some stores that don't have that feeling. You know, don't have, because we've been to a bunch of LGSs that really don't have that sort of feeling. But we kind of just go there and find some people to play with, and everyone's always really nice. I've never had a bad, unless you play competitively, then that changes things. Because then you want to win.
I would imagine.
Yeah. You just want to win.
No, I think it's just salty players. Avoid the salty players.
Yeah, just avoid salty players. Yeah.
Shayla, I wanted to ask you that you said you're relatively new. How long have you been playing?
I started playing summer of 2018.
Oh, okay. So, wow.
I'm not good at math. Not even that simple math.
It's almost 3 years, I guess.
That's about 3 years.
Almost 3
okay.
years. Yeah, about 3 years or so.
Yeah.
And so the question I had, and the thing I really wanted to know is, obviously Renee is really good at bugging people for stuff. And then what is it about the game that when you finally like sat down and played and thought, oh shit, now I'm going to start doing this all the time? Or was it a slow build to that?
I think it was a slow build because I started out with a completely different format, which is Pauper.
Pauper format is where you only play cards that were printed on at the common level. So in Magic the Gathering, up until a set called Shards of Alara, they had common cards, uncommon cards, and rare cards, which is basically, you open up a booster pack and you have a bunch of commons, a couple of uncommons, and then you have a rare. And now they have the mythic rare. So a Pauper is, you can play with anything that has been printed before, but as long as it's been printed in the common slot at one point or another.
Yeah.
So that's what I taught her with common decks, with Pauper decks.
Yeah, he taught me with that one deck, and I hated it. I hated that deck, but it was because of one specific card, and I'll tell you, it was the art, and it's a Wild Nakatl, right? I was obsessed with that card. And then as I kept playing, I was like, I really got attached to that one card. I got attached to one card, and that's what got me into really got me to like the game. And then I got my first commander deck. And then, I started making it my own. It was like a little project. So I think it's just, when you get attached to a certain card. Like, my username is Eidolon of Blossoms, because when I got my first commander deck, that's the one card I got attached to. And I mean, now that I've been playing, I realize it's not that good of a card. But it's just the attachment to certain cards. They're like pet cards or art and stuff like that gets me to that got me to the game.
Yeah. And I just want to add on that, it's I mean, for the people who are listening who play Magic, it's hard to put pet cards on the chopping block when you're building a deck, especially when it comes to EDH, because you want to put Wild Nakatl and all of those cards in your deck, and I'm like, it's no good anymore.
It really isn't.
That's some of the funnest stuff too, though, is being able to I think deck building is one of the biggest things.
Yeah, it's like a little puzzle. Yeah, it's like a game before you play the game.
Yeah,
yeah,
I would think so.
And I think that's one of the things that I would imagine is what keeps people kind of coming back, is this idea that I can improve on this deck by putting in these cards. I guess this is something we should have mentioned at the beginning of the show, but for people that don't know how Magic works, it's like you assemble the deck you're playing against the other person with yourself. So there's your personality can kind of go into it, right? Like what you think works, what you think doesn't. I know from playing I play a couple of, I used to play Hearthstone, and I'm playing Legends of Runeterra, which they're basically clones of Magic, right? But you can kind of go as deep or as shallow as you want. You can just ask your friend what deck you think is good, or you can do the research yourself. And would you say that's part of the draw to it?
Yeah. For example, I made one deck just to troll the table. That was the whole point. It had no win con. I had no way of winning, but it was fun to make people angry at the table. It was my Deleva deck.
Yeah,
it was just board wipe after board wipe and exiling people's stuff. That was all it was.
And there's also archetypes in the game too.
Yeah.
I mean, a deck like that, like she was saying, that exiles your graveyard for somebody
exile
like
your
me,
library.
exile your library,
Yeah.
or your graveyard or whatever. For people like, for example, me, who I love to play graveyard strategies. I am known as the Golgari guy in my play group because I just love to cast things from my graveyard. I like to play things from my graveyard. And so when somebody plays something like that, it just makes me cry.
And that's why I played that deck.
And that's why she played that. She's like, well, I'm going to destroy Renee. It's like, well, it does destroy me. So, yeah, you can also do things to not necessarily spite, but play against specific metas and against your groups and stuff like that. But I think that makes the game more fun, at times, just to make people, well, especially not just random people, but just your friends, right? To make them just miserable.
That was just the deck to mess with my friends. Yeah, it's like I want to make you guys all mad.
And you know what? I think that sounds awesome because it's you can't really do that in poker. You know what I mean? Like there isn't like a thing you can do that's just gonna piss people off, other than maybe just taking a long time. But so part of the inner struggle I have with Magic is that I know that if I start to play, I'll probably get really into it, and it'll be another physical thing I'll have that my wife will hate me owning. She's already very tolerant of so much of the stuff that's in this room, but that's part of the thing that's been kind of holding me back from diving headfirst into it, has been the idea that I'll get a deck, but then of course the way I think Magic keeps itself fresh is how often do they release new cards and sets and stuff? Into the standard format, which goes into standard, modern, pioneer, and everything else. There's one per season, so about a set every 3 months, and that's not including supplementary sets, precons, commander precons. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
I just bought something, and then a couple weeks later, I'm like, oh, now I need this too. Yeah. I don't, but I do. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the nerd need, right? I know what you mean exactly. Yeah. One of my memories of Magic later on, when I was, this must have been high school or maybe early college, was my buddy E-Man. He's in our group, our game night group. Yeah. But his brother, for a couple years, kind of made a living selling Magic cards on eBay. And that was his whole thing. He would go to Frankincense on Wednesday and Saturday. For people that aren't in California, every Wednesday and Saturday there's a mini comic book convention in Southern California called Frankincense. And
it's more like a nerd swap meet.
That's what I call it.
Yeah, it is basically a nerd swap meet. But it's just this little thing where they just a bunch of vendors selling nerdy shit, or sports memorabilia. But he would go every week, and he would just buy boxes of Magic cards. And he would go home, and I was there because one summer his parents were gone, and Jesus Christ, his house turned into this mini nerdy gaming convention. And he just had on the floor all these cards laid out, and I'm like, what are you doing? I'm breaking these into sets and I'm creating decks. And I was like, okay. He's like, you're not allowed in this room. And then we went and played Mage Knight. This is also the guy, this is one of my favorite memories, not related to Magic, but he was really into Gran Turismo. And there was a 24-hour race in Gran Turismo. Is that the original on the PlayStation? The original on the PlayStation. You could do a 24-hour F Formula 1 race. And he took the big TV, and he would play for 2 hours a day. And then he would just pause the PlayStation, and we were not allowed to touch it.
Interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing. I remember playing Gran Turismo. I just don't remember having a 24-hour race.
Well, I'm sure you would see it and go, "There's no fucking way I'm doing that shit."
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
that's ridiculous. Gran Turismo was. I just remember not being able to pass one of the licensing tests and just being upset and walking away.
Yeah, I hate driving games. If people say it's easier when you have an actual wheel, that's complete bullshit because it's not. It's harder.
I don't know. I mean, I've always liked it, but I'm not enough of a car guy to think I really need to pretend to drive this car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and for some reason, everybody always wanted to drive the Skyline in Gran Turismo.
You know what? Just a fun side note, I think Gran Turismo is the reason the Skyline is so popular in the United States.
I would
even
think
though
so.
it was never here.
That makes a lot of sense.
Anyway, moving back to
I had
to
no
Magic.
idea what any of that was.
See, that's how I feel. Like you guys have been dropping a whole bunch of like, oh man, and I play this, but I like that. One of my weird hobbies is I like following meme sites for very specific subgenres of stuff. So I'll follow like a chess group on like Instagram or Facebook, and they'll put up a meme that's like when she tries to use blah blah blah's defense against my thing, and then it's like a picture of a rook, and you see all these chess nerds just laughing, and I'm like, that's hilarious to someone, and that makes me happy.
I guess that's true. I never thought of it that way. See, this is why you and I are the greatest podcast duo of all time.
Yes.
Because of things like this.
Well, I would say that's why we're probably the most ill-prepared, but at least listenable. But I'll take it.
I would think so. You know, it's funny because we try to prepare. Let's just make it known. We try to prepare for these things, but it's just we just happen to have a good time when we do this. You know, and preparation just goes out the door at points, not all the time, just at points. Yeah.
Shayla, I gotta ask you, what are your next steps? Because it sounds like you just kind of fell into being a Magic content creator. What are your next steps? Like, what do you want to do going forward within the?
I just like to make videos. It's just for fun. It's just a hobby. I don't expect to go anywhere with it. I know I've seen that some people are like making content to try to, I don't know, make money or something. I don't know. But I'm just doing them for fun. And then I'm going to name drop this person. His name is Old Taku. I made a video parodying my favorite content creator. And he's like, and because that content creator actually liked and retweeted my video. So I got so excited. And I was like, oh my God, he liked and retweeted. And the guy's like, now your next goal should be being able to be a voice actress for one of his goblins. And I was like, yes, that is my next goal. I want to be able to voice one of his goblins. I'm going to keep making videos to troll to see if it happens.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, because he has a little goblin in the beginning of a show that just like makes weird noises. And I'm like, I want to do that. I want to make a weird noise.
Dude, that is actually really cool. I mean, I again, like, just knowing that there's a thriving community around this game just kind of makes me happy. So that's awesome.
But you know, sorry, Jose, but before I forget, even though the community thrives and gets better, what are some of the things that affect the game?
Affect the game?
Well, excuse me, that's sneeze number 2 for the second week in a row.
You gotta put 2 pennies in this jar.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. What I meant to say is, what are some things that the community voice their opinions about? Like, what are some of those things?
There's a lot of things that the community disagrees about, and some of them are not very nice about it. I'm gonna admit, like, if you say something that they don't agree with, they'll go all up in your business, and I'm like, oh, that's crazy. And 2 of like the biggest controversies that I've seen so far are, 1, the reserve list. Do you want to explain what the reserve list is?
Sure. The reserve list is a group of cards that Wizards of the Coast have said that will never be reprinted again. They are not being reprinted, usually because of collector value, and it's usually all old cards that have been out of circulation for who knows how long. And those reserve list cards are things that people want to play but just can't afford them. Yeah. And so that's what their opinion, I'm assuming, gets voiced on, is because, you know, some of these cards can cost anywhere from $100 to thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah. And
people wish that they can play these cards, but then because they're on the reserve list, they can't afford them.
Yeah, and some people are super like, ban the reserve list, ban it, and some people are like, no, like, I'm a that's crazy. What are you talking about? Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things that I see on TikTok. And the second one is proxies. Like, some people are okay with, like, proxies are fake cards, right?
Yeah, cards that people, you know, you can write something on a piece of paper to say, hey, this is a proxy. And
like,
things like that. Or people can print proxies.
Yeah, like printing a version of a card because you don't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some people really don't like proxies. They don't like seeing people use fake cards, and other people are okay with it. That's like one of the biggest things that I see about too.
Yeah, I would think that's the biggest one. Especially, well, I mean, I think you also need to let it be known that in the Commander format is where the proxies are.
Oh, yeah.
Because the Commander format is a casual format, and there's no competitiveness in it. There's a competitive style to the game, but it's not sanctioned by Wizards of the Coast. That's the only place you can actually play proxies, because again, it's not sanctioned or anything. It's just a casual game. People can also print proxies and kind of do their own thing, and it's all just based on your play group.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's also that's one that I do know about, is that it can be a very touchy subject, even in person.
Yeah.
Like even before the pandemic and all that, it's always kind of been an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. People like them, people don't. It all just depends.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think is part of the appeal, and also part of the thing that maybe keeps people away, right? Because, I mean, I know a lot of people that don't know shit about Magic the Gathering, but they know Black Lotus, right? They've heard that. They know that this thing is worth a lot of money.
Kind of like the Blue Eyes, what is it? The Blue Eyes Dragon?
Blue Eyes White Dragon? I don't know if that's worth a lot of money, is it?
Exodia or Charizard?
Are you just naming random Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon cards?
No, those are, aren't those like the shit?
But
aren't those like the Black Lotuses of those
know.
games?
Well,
you should know this.
I only know because
I should look it up.
there have been multiple times where like it'll come up in like a publication that's not like a nerd publication, because it'll be like you'll have a video of some guy that's unboxing or like opening a box from like way back in the day, and we'll come across a Black Lotus and he'll like just freak the fuck out. But that's, to me, and obviously I'm a collector. If you could see the ton of shit I have in my room here, that's part of the appeal.
The audience cannot see your room right now.
Well, you guys
will
can.
Be able to soon on YouTube.
You can.
That's true.
But basically, I have a shelf full of just like collectible stuff. But I think that's part of the appeal, and also part of the thing that keeps you away, right? Is knowing that like if you start collecting these cards, like some of these might be worth money, some of these might not. If I want a certain thing, I gotta be willing to shell out that dough. But I mean, I don't know where I would fall on that, right? Like using a proxy card, it's like, then couldn't you just make a fucking deck yourself and draw it yourself and be like, here, I'm gonna play this deck, and it's all these amazing cards.
Yeah, that's again, that's something that kind of plagues the community, right? Like it's always been something that especially in the Commander community, that people just are like, you either like them or you don't. There's a gentleman that we know who is a science or bio teacher, and he goes to the shop that we play, and he there was one day that we were playing, and he pulled out a card called Candelabra, and the Candelabra is actually, it was a Tabernacle.
No, it's a Candelabra.
Oh, it's a Candelabra. And he ends up playing a Candelabra, and the card at the time was about $600-$700.
Yeah.
And when in a game, when you see somebody play a Candelabra,
ooh, it's like $800.
Yeah, or you see somebody play like a Bazaar Baghdad, which is like a $1,200 card, you're like, oh my god! And the first thing that pops into your head is that real?
Yeah,
that's always something that pops up. Even if you play a dual land, which are lands that are probably at this point right now about $200-$300, depending on which one you want. Like, people always say, are those real? And usually people say, oh no, it's a proxy, I have the real one at home, or no, it's just a proxy. But this guy goes, I'm a firm believer of play what you own.
Yeah.
So it really just depends on the person. But we don't want to stray people away from the game. There's always alternatives to those cards. Like, you can always play on a budget. And the cool thing about, again, going back to the Commander format, because that's what Shayla is kind of what she's known for on TikTok, is that you can build on budgets. And for example, if you E-Man and Shayla and I, because we mentioned E-Man earlier, if the four of us want to play, we can all say, hey, we're going to build a budget deck. The most we can have on, like, value-wise in our deck is $100 or $50 or $200. Or you can just play whatever you guys want to play. And I think that's also something that people tend to forget, because you always want the good stuff. But if everybody kind of sticks to the same restrictions, it can just be as fun.
Yeah.
Like, we've had so much fun with budget decks and pauper decks and whatever.
It adds to the diversity of the game.
Yes.
You get to see like weird cards that you don't get to see because
Because there's also staples, right?
Yeah.
There's also staples. And think about it. I mean, there's 20,000 cards in the pool.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of cards. You know what I mean? So a lot of them never see the game, right? Like, there's a card, in my opinion, that is one of the best, what you would call removal spells, which is something that removes a creature from the game, from the battlefield, and it's called Lightning Bolt. And Lightning Bolt is just a $1 card, but it is mostly known to be played in a competitive format. For example, Modern or Legacy, Vintage, Pioneer, whatever it is. But because you can play 4 copies of them. But in a singleton format like Commander, sometimes you're like, why are you playing a Lightning Bolt?
Somebody criticized me for playing a Lightning Bolt in my Commander deck.
But it's so cool to be like, I'm playing a fucking Lightning Bolt because I own one. I don't care. You know what I mean? So I think that's what kind of brings the game as well. That's why I think Commander is also the biggest format. The most, the best, well, not the best, but the most popular format is because of the fact that you can do whatever you want with it. Mm-hmm. There's no restrictions.
Yeah. Just a little to add to that. I remember a friend of ours was like, "Why are you playing a Lightning Bolt in your Commander deck?" And I was like, "Did it get rid of your Hermit Druid though?" I was like, "Did it? It did." Yeah. I was like, "Don't judge me. I do what I want. It's pretty fun."
No, okay, yeah, all right. And then, so this is where I was kind of thinking. One, again, you did one of those things like, did it get rid of your Hermit? That's my favorite thing ever. But but like to what Renee said, that's the thing that that's I think the thing that sometimes takes me back for Magic, because you're like, oh, you can create a budget deck, and then the first number you pulled out was $100.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I was gonna say, I was like, $100 budget. Because then I was thinking you were gonna say 20.
Oh well, yeah, you could do that too, 20. But I've seen decks that are cents, right? Like there's even a format online that's called, I don't even know if it's playable anymore, but it's called Penny. It's called Penny, I think, or Penny something, and every card is online though has to be worth a penny. So you can build a deck for $1, you know what I mean? Online, obviously, but
no, I found it funny because that's one of the things I think when people criticize the game, right, is that it's kind of like, in order to stay competitive or interesting, you have to keep buying the cards, right? Like you have to kind of keep going. Or is it the type of thing where you can buy a deck and then just play it for years? Or is... Because I thought that was part of the strategy of it. I know, like, with Hearthstone and, like, other fucking games I've played, it's like, when a new expansion comes out, it's like, oh, well, there goes my deck because it's broken now because of whatever's coming out. Now, from what I understand, I think the appeal of Magic is that it's been so balanced for so long that you don't necessarily have that problem, but I don't know if that's true or not.
I think I think it has to do with what format you're playing.
Okay.
Like you were talking about Hearthstone. Yeah, when you play, there's always cards that get printed that will usually kind of dump on other archetypes or other decks for a little bit. But then there's always ways that usually those decks or those archetypes will always find ways to kind of figure out how to get back into the meta. By that meaning, there's tier 1 decks, tier 2 decks, tier 3 decks, right? Like powerful decks and stuff like that. But again, in Shayla's case, because like I said, she's a Commander content creator, that is kind of broad because you can do whatever you want. And yeah, I did say $100 because that's something that I built. I built like a $75 deck before.
Because that's budget to Renee.
Because that's a budget. Well, no, I'm poor.
Renee is just baller.
I'm obviously, as you can tell by my headphones, I'm a baller. But you can. There's a guy on YouTube called the Commander's Quarters. His name is Mitch, and he used to do $25 deck techs.
He even did a $5. He's done $5 deck techs. Yeah.
And now he kind of sticks to $50 deck techs, and I think that is kind of a sweet spot for the kind of format that you want to play. It's a lot of fun. You know what I mean? And it can vary, and it can hold up to a lot of other decks. Like, you don't always need expensive cards.
And that's I think the thing that's cool, because and I'm gonna actually, when we do this episode, I'm gonna put a warning at the beginning explaining what formats and all that stuff mean. But one thing that I think is important about that, and the thing I always try to counterpoint is, the reason you have to keep buying cards is, and you guys keep talking about the meta, and let me make sure I've got this right. The meta game is like the overall game, like the trends you're seeing in the game overall, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
What'll happen, and you see this in video games all the time, right? Someone will figure out a formula that works a lot, right? So if it's like, wow, they'll say like, oh, well, druids are overpowered, and we didn't really see that in like playtesting. But like one particular class, or if it's like Call of Duty, one gun becomes really popular. So then they fix that.
Kind of like Street Fighter.
Like Street Fighter. Yeah.
When Street Fighter 4 came out, Sagat was just busted.
Yeah.
Right? And then they have to nerf it. And then Ryu was busted. And then Akuma. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
same idea.
Yeah, you can't patch a card. So then when the next set comes out, you need something to disrupt it so that the same people aren't winning every time with the same decks. And the game becomes stale.
You either patch it or you ban it.
Right?
You just ban it from the format completely.
But, yeah, so that's always been my counterpoint. But then again, that's the thing. You kind of see both sides. It's like, oh, that's what makes the game interesting and kind of keeping it fresh forever. But it's also what might be like a barrier of entry, where it's like, oh man, if I'm going to have to invest, if you're Renee, $4,000 or $5,000 every time you're buying a new deck.
Yeah, Renee.
Because you're just going to be Renee 5K. That's the number.
Yeah, Renee, I like that.
5K
Renee. I dig that. I dig that.
But again, like, yeah, that I think it's cool, and I can see it. But that's what keeps me awake, because I'm always worried, like, oh my god, I'm gonna just start dropping money like crazy.
Now I have an idea to get Jose something for his birthday and for Christmas. It's gonna be a Commander deck, so we can just get him to play with us. I think that's where it's going, Jose. You better be ready.
I know. I will take the Magic cards over any Newfound Glory stuff, regardless. So.
No, well, I was going to say that another cool thing about being able to play Magic is that you're able to style it out any way you want. Like, you can get sleeves. Shayla has Ron Weasley sleeves right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can get deck boxes, custom deck boxes. The cool thing, I think one of the biggest thing that attracts, and correct me if I'm wrong, Shayla, but one of the biggest things I think attract people need to remember that D&D and Magic apply for like 70% of all fantasy writing in the world, right? So on top of just like the writing, the lore and the story, you also have all the beautiful art that you can see on some of these cards. And so even times people like to get their stuff altered. Like there's a card that I love. It's called Riku of Two Reflections.
Oh my god.
And we saw this beautiful altar online. And just because of the name of the card, Riku of Two Reflections, it has this guy with the dude in the middle of the card, but some lady altered it to have was it Matt? It had Matt Smith and David Tennant as the doctors on each side of the card, because the name of the card was called Riku of Two Reflections, and I think that is so cool when you see things like that.
It was super cool.
Yeah, so I think art has a lot to do with it too. I know people that like build decks based on the art themselves. Like that's
like
also
what I'm
pretty
doing.
cool too. Yeah, like what she's doing.
Yeah.
Well, and that's definitely something. Like, as I was watching, like kind of researching the game, there are some people that just the art is what kind of drew them in, because I mean, you've got to be right. Like there's only so many fantasy novels and like video games, right? But this is an ever evolving kind of growing thing. One of the things that I find interesting is like
each set even has a story, by the way.
Right. So there's a lore to it. That I mean, I'm obviously not familiar with, but like I know there are certain characters, or what are they called? Planeswalkers that are like kind of big in the story of Magic. I know there's like Funko Pops of certain ones of these characters going out. I know there's a video game in development that's supposed to be coming out that's kind of like a Diablo style.
Yeah, it's like an MMO almost.
Yeah, it's like it's that top-down Diablo style open world MMO. But the thing that I thought was cool is that your spells, like whereas in Diablo you have your set build, you have a deck. So you have your deck of spells, and then when you use that spell, it rotates back into your deck. So it's like combining the two worlds. I found that like an interesting dynamic. And as you guys were talking about, there's so many different formats that you can play with a game that's got to be another reason why it's still 30 years and people are still playing it, right? Because it's not. You've talked about like playing with 2, 3, 4 people, and if the lore is rich enough that you can. I know there are comic books. At one point, there was a movie that was supposed to be made. I think there's a series coming out on Netflix soon, or at least supposed to be in development at Netflix.
Yeah, I think they said next year.
Yeah, so like all this stuff is happening, and it's all from this again, like this card game that was originally just something that was supposed to keep you occupied until your DM showed up.
Yeah, we can. It's. I don't want to say that it is a difficult game. Like there are intricacies in the game, rules, but again, like we've said before, there are ways that you just learn those things as you move on. Even now, 15 years into the game, I just learned about a thing called layering. I'm like, what? That's part of the game? Like, no, that's a group rule, right. Basically. And it's just things I'm like, well, I never even heard of that. I never had to deal with that when I was playing competitively or things like that. So it gets easier as you move on, and in all honesty, it just gets more fun. And I think that's something that people, as we kind of wind down here, is that we hope we don't deter people away, because I'm part of the community as well. So I'm speaking for myself and hopefully for Shayla and for the rest of the community, that we don't want to deter anybody away. We just want to get more people involved, because then that means that the more people that purchase these things and get into the game, the longer it's going to be. And in all honesty, we have people in our play group that are in their early 20s to their mid 40s. You know what I mean? Like the game can go on forever.
Yeah. And then like I was teaching tiny little kids, like the girl I think I was teaching was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And her mom was concerned. She's like, what are these cards? I was like, it's okay, they're learning math.
Yeah.
They're learning math. It's okay.
Yeah. And you know what? That's also something too that, like I said before we went down here, is something that I've actually seen. There's a Magic pro player. Was she a pro? Yeah, she's a pro player now. Her name is Dana Fisher, and she has to be 11 years old now.
I think
maybe
so,
12
around
years
there.
old. And she started playing when she was 3 or 4 years old, and she was interviewed. Her and her dad were interviewed by a couple other Magic podcasts, and he said I just got her to learn math. Like it was just with a bunch of vanilla cards, and all we did was just teach her, okay, if this is a 5/5 and this is a 3, how much damage is it? You know what I mean? And it's just easy math. And as she got older, they got more intricate. She was the youngest player at the time. I'm assuming she still might be the youngest player in history to ever day 2 a Grand Prix. And a Grand Prix is basically like they're big events. They happen every couple weeks, and the prize is super high. And usually after day 1, if you can qualify for day 2, then you're in with like only 64 people or 32, 16, whatever it might be. And then it just gets even harder as you move on. So she was the youngest. So that goes to show you that it's gonna be here for a long time. And I hope it is, because I'm hoping as we get older and we have our kids and stuff at some point in life, they can learn it as well and all that stuff. And so that's just I just hope that everybody just keeps being nice to each other, especially to keep playing the game, especially when we get back to human contact at some point.
Well, and I think one thing I definitely think will end up happening. God damn, sorry. I split my nail earlier today, and I just caught it on something, so it hurt like crazy. Yeah, once the world kind of opens up again, the idea of... Because I think at the end of the day, the thing that makes this fun is you get to hang out with your friends and have fun and play a game that's fun, it's interesting, you can all kind of talk about it. You were mentioning it earlier, right? Like when you're playing a game of Magic, it's not like you're just talking about the game, right? You're talking about movies, sports, whatever. That's something that I think kind of gets lost in something like D&D, because if you're playing something like D&D and you start having side conversations, it kind of derails the game. But with Magic, it looks like that's a part of it, right? That kind of like just bullshitting and just kind of like hanging out with people.
You know how many times I talk about fantasy football during the season while I'm playing Commander with a bunch of people who are it's a lot.
I'm okay with them talking. They get so distracted with their side talking, and that's why I keep winning. You know,
right? She's known.
And then
they're
like, "When did you play this? Oh, you guys were talking."
Yeah.
I said it like 3 times.
She is known to whip our ass all the time in our playgroup.
I am. No, I'm just kidding.
It's still it's pretty funny. There's a joke. before I forget it, there's a joke with our friend Joe. She had built this deck, and within like the first 4 turns, she just killed the both of us at the same time, and it happened back to back. And I remember him and I just look at each other.
Oh, it was my Rhino deck.
Yeah, and Joe looked at us. Joe looked at me. He's like, "What the hell just happened?" And I remember just laughing, like, "Did you expect anything different?" You know what I mean? And so that's always really funny too, to just have those kind of stories, you know.
At first, it was because you would always be talking with each other, and I'd be like, "Okay, I'm playing this. You guys, I'm playing this," and you guys are so distracted. I'm like, "I'm playing this.
Yeah.
I'm not. That's it. It's here. It happened."
Yeah.
And then you guys like, "What happened? I said this like 3 turns ago, guys."
Yeah. That kind of happens with us too, Jose, with our game night group, right? When we're doing something and we just lose track, we're like, "Oh, we forgot we're playing Catan."
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, who put this settlement here? Like, I did. Oh, okay. Guess that derails me because I was in the middle of having a conversation with Jose about Tool or something.
Yeah, man. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. Shayla, as we wind down here, I do want to ask you, where can people find you on the internet?
Hey, why don't you tell her what the why don't you say what the screen name is?
Yeah, what's my name?
You go for her name.
Where can people find Untitled Blossoms on the internet?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Untitled Blossoms on the internet.
That was a nice try.
Thank you.
My boyfriend can't pronounce my name. I am Eidolon of... I can't say it either. Eidolon of Blossoms.mtg on TikTok and Instagram, I believe. And that's pretty much it. I don't have any other social medias.
Cool. Do you have any events that you want to plug, or have you done some events or some other people you want to kind of talk about for the community?
Yeah, I'm actually doing my first live stream tomorrow morning with... Hold on. With...
Free podcast, everybody.
Yeah, I was not prepared for this.
Don't even worry about it because this episode comes out.
This happens a lot more often than you think.
Oh, no, I know how often it happens. I know how often it happens.
And this episode does drop the day after your live stream, but, it's cool that she talks about it.
It's okay. I'll talk about it. I'm promoting it in the future or whatever.
So people can always go and watch it again, right? Because it's going to be, okay, you can always
you can always go back, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Go back in time. I'm actually streaming tomorrow with Elder Dragon Skylander over on Twitch tomorrow at 10 a.m., which is really early for a Commander game, but I'm down. And I'm playing an all-ladies game this Thursday at 6 p.m. here at Renee's house.
Ooh.
Over on another creator's Twitch channel. Her name is Zbex, and I'm going to be playing with 3 other EDH MTG creators, which are Soul Ring MTG and MTG Girl.
And people will be able to watch these as replays, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. Cool.
Yes.
Jose, where can people find us?
One of the cool things I did want to talk about is I do love the Magic the Gathering like stream setups because it's like this multi-camera where you got to see the cards, and that's one of my.
That's actually something that we've been doing.
That's something I think is really cool because it's like ingenuity. It's like you can actually play a physical card game.
Yeah.
While away
We've
from
actually
everybody.
been doing that too. It's actually pretty cool.
We just started.
Yeah, we just started. We were able to put. We have a webcam. I have a webcam on top of my desk, and I move everything, and I have a lamp, and you go on this website called Spell Table. It's a program, and other people get to play with you. So that's always cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. All right, let me get to our plugs. So, all right, guys, your one-stop shop for Half Step Down is halfstepdownpod.com. You go there, you can find links to all our episodes, social media, all that is there. If you are on social media, you can go to @halfstepdownpod. We are on Instagram and Twitter. Check out our Instagram stories. We're going to have a playlist on there. We've decided we're just going to start adding some songs. I think Shayla's going to have to give some suggestions for songs to add now that we have a Magic the Gathering playlist kind of going. If you are on Facebook, go to facebook.com/halfstepdownpod. You can also find us on YouTube. Again, YouTube, just look in the search bar, Half Step Down Pod. Check out our Spotify links in the description. It'll have our playlist that we're just going to keep running. We're going to keep adding songs, changing songs on there. If you like what you hear, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to help spread the word, use hashtag HalfStepDownPod and hashtag Road to 100. And of course, tune in to Half Step Down Radio on TitanRadio.org every Thursday night at 7 p.m.
Shayla, thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Jose, do you have anything to relay before we go and before we let Shayla go?
No, Shayla, I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. And I'll make sure that all the links to all your socials and everything are on the description of the... And
thanks so much for having me.
And I will promote the shit out of this. I will use lots of Instagram this week. I promise.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you, guys. Well, thank you, babe. I really appreciate it that you came onto the show, your boyfriend's podcast.
Not because I made you.
Not because you made me, right? It's because we had this idea for Magic, and we're like, let's throw Shayla on here. We know a content creator, Jose. We're in front of royalty right now.
Yeah.
Magic royalty.
Yeah. TikTok. Well, I can't be the TikTok queen because that's already Zbex, but I'll be the TikTok princess.
Okay.
No.
She's the TikTok princess, everyone.
The Magic the Gathering TikTok princess.
Yeah. There it is. Well, everyone have a good night. Shayla, thank you so much for doing this again. We are eternally grateful for being the very first guest on the Half Step Down podcast.
You heard that, Romeo?
The first. He's probably still talking about T-Rex as we speak right now.
Sorry, Romeo. That title's mine now.
He has not stopped talking. Yeah, I totally agree with Jose. He's probably still talking about it right now. Before we go, I'm sorry. You know what? The music's probably going to start rolling at this point, but I just have one question. I have one story about our cousin Romeo, Jose, and our cousin Romeo. He had come over one day. We were planning my dad's 70th birthday party, and he had mentioned the story to my sister and my dad in the kitchen. And then we leave, and we're in the car, and he says the same. He relays the same story to me while I happen to be there, right? And we went to go eat, and he said the same story in the car that he told me in the car at the restaurant, which he also told me at home. And so I literally started verbatim saying the same thing he was saying to me. And he goes, "Why are you being an asshole?" I said, "You told me the same story 3 times in 20 minutes, dude." Like, he does that all the time. It's like a thing for that guy. I love you, Romeo, but stop telling me the same story.
I'm the first guest now.
Yeah, I guess that happens to me too. I tend to say the same stories on the show.
Did you end it? Right. We'll see you guys later.
I think we're ending it now. Shayla, thank you very much for doing this.
That's like the third time we ended it.
Yeah, we shall see everybody next week. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.
Yeah, give it up for these guys. I promise you guys.
Just so we're all clear, that was not like a real song. Okay. I made that up.